President Trump why be widely trusted by everything. I will make America healthy again.
I think I'm up on the YouTube, so why don't we get started here? Yeah, I figured we get started today. Just looking at today's chart, not too much to talk about. And then I have some things I've been studying over the last couple of weeks. I think it'd be worth taking a look at. So I think kind of a very boring day up until kind of the very end. I did not have much from this early part of the day. The only thing I really saw was near the end of the day here. We had this kind of support developing here near the daily highs. Was there anything from earlier in the day anyone wants to, take a look at, talk about, comment on?
I think the second entry long towards the end of the day, that one that Dan took, I struggled with them ones a little bit.
Yeah.
I did see the EMA was vertical with it, with the channel. So I did think it was all right, but to me, it was still a little bit congested for me to take.
So I took this on one of my contracts, one of my accounts. As I told you guys in the past, on some of these trades, if I don't feel great about it, instead of taking on all 12, I'll take on just one, which I did. And I think I even made a comment in the Discord saying, if you skip this one due to congestion, I think that's a fine read, right? I think this one really came down to this whole. So if you really want to be strict with your trend lines, you draw from the lowest point, right, through the first closes, right? And I know some people had it drawn out here, right? But if you really think about it, and this is because this is how I had it drawn.
Sorry, RJ, are you sharing your screen?
Oh, am I not?
I was just about to say, it's not on yet.
Sorry. Now that I set up the YouTube, it's like once I see the YouTube up, I just assume that I'm sharing my screen. All right, can you guys see my screen now?
Yep. Thank you.
So on this one, all right, as I was attempting to demonstrate, oftentimes, and this is where things can get a little tricky. I know some people had it drawn out here, right? I drew it through here because technically, these are the closes, right? I know we see the body. These aren't really breaks because this is just the open, right? Remember, when we talk about a break, Mac is very specific on his wording when he says a close outside, right? Now, when you see something like this, you still draw it off the close, right? But, this doesn't constitute as a break because this is just the start of the bar occurring on the outside. So that's how I had it drawn, and then that kind of lines up perfectly with how this trade happens, right? And if you kind of go back to, how I had it, it also, as you're starting to work up, we see the midline. We start to confirm right here, right? And we start to see, we have touches up here. So when we're working back, I know that it is congested, but one thing that we'll touch on after this that I kind of want to use as a study tool is that, and I touched on it earlier in the Discord, I would say 98% of Dan's trades, have one of two things in common, right? It's a very simple, if you look at the last 3 to 10 bars before all of Dan's trades, it's usually prices are decisively moving without a whole bunch of chop, right? The legs are clean. If not, The only other requirement that he was looking for is that there's a development of a key entry point he feels confident in, right? Now, you can make the argument, it's been a long time since we've gone 1, 2, 3, right? But just candidly, right? I felt good about this key entry point, right? Reason being is that after working our way down, there was an initial discussion of, okay, are we going to develop some resistance here, right? And even then, are we going to get a move where we have a leg, two-legged correction, and then another leg, and then we work in opposite direction, right? Well, watching this kind of 1, 2, 3 right here develop, and then see when prices made it up here, continue working its way up, that's what kind of gave me the confidence to say, okay, we are in a trend. So when we make it back to here, right, it's more of a, confidence and, reason to take that. Now, to the point of congestion, right? I've been trying to think of a good analogy because the word I've been using a lot in the Discord is smushed, but I'm trying to think of a better way to put it, right? Because when we look at like congestion, right? Actually, I'll draw it in a trend just to make it easier to apply to this, right? So congestion can develop in scenarios where we are trying to build out price action principles. It's due to the strength of a key entry point, right? So for instance, think of it kind of like a Roomba, right? I know we come from all over the world. Are you guys familiar with Roombas? Like the robotic vacuums that are circular, right? And they kind of run a program where they go in a direction, and once they hit something, right, they turn around and go in another direction, right? So sometimes we can develop congestion when we move to a key entry point, right? And we're trying to do this move, right? But because the support is so strong, it ends up just getting jammed up in between what the move is trying to do versus what this key entry point is, right? Versus there are times when prices are just kind of like how Dan was talking about here, right? Where this is less due to this congestive kind of nature is less due to this resistance level holding and more just to do with we are kind of indecisively moving sideways, right? So in this scenario, we kind of do get this congestion is a result of prices are moving counter to where we want them to move to. Let me move this out of the way. But then also getting jammed up in between this support level, right? So these are two opposing forces that are kind of pushing prices together rather. So this congestion is a product of two actual movements versus indecisive movements, right? Um, so this read is purely just, do you feel good about this key entry point holding, right? And I would venture to say, if you ask Dan directly, he would mention, having to do with the two legs back plus the momentum of his move, right? Um, and those are little nuanced things you can pick up. If you made the read to skip because it was sideways, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 7 bars in a row, that's fine. If you took it because you felt like this was two legs back to a key entry point, that's also fine. I think this is one that I have a fair amount of confidence in it working. That's why I took it on just one, but not the most confidence, if that makes sense. Does anyone else have any other comments or things they want to say on that particular trade?
I think if it pulled back just a little bit more in the middle of the channel, just back to the key entry point, I would have been a lot more comfortable. I'm not really a fan of them when they stay in the top half for quite a while. When they first come back, I'm a bit cautious of that as well.
You mean, we say top half, you mean
when it's staying higher in the channel for quite a few bars.
Right up here.
Yeah, when it's spending a lot of time up
Yeah.
there, and then it first comes back, that's when I take a bit of caution, just in case it does get the momentum to try and break the channel.
And here's what happens, Sean, in a situation like that, right? We develop a scenario where we have, you know, and I know Dan had it drawn slightly different, but I had it as you had the singular leg down, little two-leg correction to move, another singular leg down, move down. Like this was all just short-term stuff for me, right? So with that being said, and this is one thing that, I have greatly studied in the last couple of weeks. It's, you know, we do talk about having these kind of two-legged moves to a reversal, right? But then also what happens when you get a two-legged move, and then it continues up, right? And what this is saying is we've had this kind of attempt at a correction, two legs up, and then prices just continue up. So the reason that they're staying up here is that there's just an entire lack of selling pressure, right? So this whole move is just, prices trading is like, the market's a zero-sum game. So there's no one in here that's selling the market. There's no one that's trying to pick a top here. And really, we only really get enough of, some counter moves just based on the fact that we kind of hit these overnight highs, right? Yeah, but I do get what you're saying because this is not really trending, right? So this is just going. It's just making a beeline towards this price target without really much of price action principles. Although you could make the argument that this is a lag, a little correction in the middle plus another leg. The other move I was looking at was this triple test. As for those who are regulars on the call, we discuss this move all the time. If there's a move that Dan takes at a much higher percentage than I think most of the traders, it's this post-trend triple test. For me, this move, I was having a hard time reading if this was a two-legged move down or this was chopped down. I did write in the Discord, what I'll do in a move like this, especially when triple test is developing, I will have my range where I will only enter if the low point of the bar is within a certain threshold, right? And with this being so tight, we don't want to get caught trying to take a triple test that's making lower lows. I said, if it goes one tick lower, just with the 1, 2, 3, right, I'd be okay entering that. Of course, it makes two ticks. But if someone took it to the triple test, I would not play. Like I said, the only thing that's really something to pay attention to is you need to make the read here. If you feel that this is kind of two legs back, which you can get the visual two legs back, but you can also make the argument it's kind of choppy to this level, right? Did anyone else want to talk about that one or take that trade?
I only marked it, but I didn't take it. I wasn't at the desk at the time.
I get it. Now, real quick before we go to the next thing, one thing that I've been doing as of late, and this is, since we're using my charts, is I now am going to put a big emphasis on prices shopping to price levels, right? What I mean by that is, I think we can all read congestion, we can all see congestion, right? But there is a term and thing that we see where prices will chop to a price level versus have a decisive move. Now, when I trade now, when I see that, I'll just mark that area with a orange triangle, right? And if you have any questions about what that is, it's essentially just saying, do I feel like that leg, whether it's the first leg of the move or the second leg of the move or whatever, is a clean leg, or if prices are just chopping to that point, right? And I'll kind of go over the kind of the genesis of why I started doing that, but just for reference, I'll be referencing that a lot in future study calls. Let me bring this over. From 5, 9. All right. So before I move on, is there anything else anyone wants to discuss in today's chart? Oh, like I said, hope everyone had a great break. Over the break, I did a lot of studying, and I had a brief conversation with Dan in Discord. But we've done some study drills and activities where we looked at all of Dan's actual entries. And as I was going through charts and really focusing on, what Dan has said and looking at my missed trades for the year and stuff like that, one common thread that I think was popping up was this term that prices are chopping to a level versus, kind of making, decisive movements towards the price level, right? Now, if we're going to go, this is a good example of one, but I'm not taking a look at all of them, and we'll see how many this applies to. But like I said earlier, if you look at Dan's trades, they fall into one of two categories. There's either a decisive support or resistance. Most of the time, it's a range support or resistance, like a support level or resistance level, but sometimes it's just a key entry point within the trend, right? That helps dictate, where he feels good taking trades off of. Or if you look at the previous, like I said, 3 to 10 bars, it moves relatively clean to wherever he enters that trade. And that works for almost all of his entries. For instance, this entry up here, if we look at the last 3 to 10 bars, it is a little choppy getting to there, right? So, therefore, he probably would not take this trade unless there is a strong resistance level above here, right? Which there is. We have a 1, 2, 3 triple test. So even though there is a level of congestion, and I think Dan has mentioned where when you have a center of the pattern that is congested, is something to be, pay attention to. But in that case, we need something to override that, which is this resistance level, right? Now, he has this one marked green, support level. But then if we look at this next entry, well, what is something that immediately stands out? Well, you have a clean leg, and a clean leg. So if you look at the 3 to 10 bars before this move, it's decisive, it's moving, there's not a kind of overlying chart, right? And it even extends into this last entry. I will take failures, but it's kind of the same thing. A move is played out. We have a clean leg up, 1, clean leg up, 2. Right? If we go through so many of Dan's charts, we'll see this over and over and over again on prices that he's entered on. Entry, clean leg up, clean leg down, right? This is only entry for the day. On C-Day, we may not get a ton to here. If you look at, that's the entry point, look at the previous bars, it's stacked up, a little choppy, but what is the one thing that will override all of that? A development of support, right? Same thing. This one has both. He has showing the support resistance, clean leg up, clean leg down, clean leg up. And it's just a matter of just looking at the previous couple bars, right? Are they clean? Are they moving? Are they making legs? On this one, we don't see the clean bars, but what do we have? A level of support. And it's really that simple. I think everyone on this call has the prerequisite skills to read at least enough nuances in the chart, right? Whether it's, trend lines, congestion, whatever. And if you just boil it down to, okay, I'm going to track the last half dozen bars. Did prices move to where I'm planning on taking this trade cleanly? Yes or no? No. Okay, is there a key entry point, a price level, which I feel good about taking off there? Yes or no? Yes, take a trade. No, not. You see this on every single day, right? In every single trade where, occasionally he'll take one that is marked green that he doesn't, because he's like, it doesn't follow those criteria, but same thing here. There's the entry bar. Well, look at the 2 legs before. Clean leg, clean leg. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? So,
Hey, quick question, RJ.
yeah.
And again, I appreciate you doing this. It's been a while since I've been on here, but what are you seeing that's a reversal? I mean, if it just goes screaming down, just one clean move down, are you looking at it to react to a support or a key entry point type area? I mean, you're just looking for a clean straight move down to down or up to a support or resistance area.
So,
and just expecting a reversal at that area?
I think it depends on a lot of things. Are we just talking in general, right? I think there's so many factors, right? But I think to answer that question, so what you're saying is that prices are moving in a direction, right? Here, let me bring up my chart back up. So if prices are moving strongly in a direction, right? Let's say it's moving down in this case. What am I looking for?
And if you would look at that and say that's a clean move down. That's just a straight.
Yep. And then as far as what I'd be looking for to start going long off that versus continuing going short.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing and the absolute number one would be trying to determine, and this is harder earlier in the day, right? Therefore, you're going to have a little more leeway earlier in the day, some things you look for, but is determining if there's just an overall mixed trading feel today or if you're in a trend, right? I think that's, you probably already know that, but I feel like that's the first thing needs to be said, right? The more mixed we are, the more likelihood of we're going to reverse out of certain areas, right?
Sure.
Now, as far as reverse, I don't take failure reversals, but what am I looking for when prices are moving down? I really want to see a clean break of the short-term move down, right? I want to see, let's say we're in a move down, right? Right, we're moving our way down, right? I want to see a clean break off that, right? That's the first.
You've got to break a new low there.
Yeah. So as far as when to say we're going to go long in the scenario, I hate to use this term, but it is kind of like a feel thing. I think you're better off usually always waiting to get the 2 legs to the new low, right? And as far as what else I'm looking for, you really want to start to develop width from the EMA, right? So a lot of it does depend on how far away we get from the EMA and how violently we're moving away from the EMA in
Mm-hmm.
this scenario, right? It's tough to, I mean, I'll see if I can bring up some Dan charts so you can find some examples of that. But this is where, whenever you hear Dan or and especially Matt talk about these trades that are, you know, oh, we want to wait for a higher low or we want to wait for something. A lot of that is with the prerequisite that we need a wait room towards the EMA, right? Because it's one of those things where as we work up, we're going to be denied at multiple price levels on the way up, whether that's previous swings, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's the EMA, whether that's anything, right? So let me actually, I can use this as an example, right? Because it's kind of a semi-decent example of this today, right? Where we have this move down and kind of start to reverse out of it, right? And then if we kind of look here, we have this move up, right? And then I know there were some people looking for shorts in here, right? Because we have this move up, two-legged break, right? And then, so the first thing here is you can understand why there may be potential reversal here because there's an expectation of this moves down, it's played out. We start to move here. We don't know if we're in a trend yet, right? I mean, in this specific example, the first thing I was looking for was right here, right? It's the fact that we should have a two-legged correction here that's getting denied here at the EMA. So therefore, I immediately just draw that, right? Because we have this 1, 2, 3 move, right? So the first thing would be, you know, we got to be super careful on this, on reversing out of things to make sure that we're not in a wider trend. So like looking for clues in the wider trend. Also, when we talk about the clean moves, right? One thing that I get caught up in all the time, I think this kind of builds to your question as well, where this is a bad example, I'm just going to use this here, where if we have a move up, right? Let's say this is the trend. I don't think it is. We have a break and we kind of get two legs to new high, and instead of immediately turning down, we're starting to chop up, right? The key thing is looking for that chop, right? So see how prices, they have this first leg up, but then they're just starting to move sideways and just kind of dancing between the EMA and kind of just slowly working its way higher. And you kind of see the same thing over here, right? That's a good sign that prices are just going to meander their way up, right? Dan briefly touched on it today on this entry, right? So I know for me personally, I was looking for a potential second entry short here, right? I know that he was talking about that. One thing that we want to see, if this leg would have made a better leg up, right? And we felt good about the space that I was creating, then we can kind of reverse out of that and, you know, create the space. But the fact is moving so sideways, it's difficult to take a trade in the counter direction when prices just kind of flatten out immediately, right? So kind of bring everything together.
You're not getting that second, you get a decisive break down, the first decisive move up, and then you're just meandering at that point.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So
well, you get a second move up.
When you're looking to reverse out of positions, right? You're looking for reasons to reverse out of positions, right? Because if you really think about it, we've talked about this. Like a large move, like I'm going to attempt to draw this in a way that it doesn't really fit, but like a large move down, like a trend down with a break, and a new low, right? Conceptually, is kind of the same thing as just a second entry. You know, like this move, right? A move, a break, and a move down. Conceptually, is the same thing as this small term, second entry long, right? It's all kind of rooted in the same concepts. So when we're looking for prices to kind of reverse out of an area, right? We're looking for them to do so in a way where we feel it's moving predictably. So if it starts to chop down or shorten up for an odd reason, like right here, right? Like we want to see this make two kind of distinct legs up, but then this one kind of just hovers right in the middle and it's overlapped by these bars. That's a sign of like, okay, we're starting to congest a little, right? Actually, I think there was an example in one of these charts. And we may have seen it. I believe the first one was 5.
I'm gonna do too what you did. I'm gonna go back through these charts and see if I can't recognize what you did. But
yeah, so like this one right here, right? This is a good example of how this one's come screaming down, break, new low, right? And Dan wants to just take a reversal, second entry long right out of it, right? Well, it has everything to do with, if you, like I said, it's a very simple thing I'm doing the chart now. Just look at the last 3 to 10 bars. It is a ton of clean movement, right? This is about as clean as a move as you're going to get. Well, in that case, I feel good taking a kind of a falling reversal out of this, right? I mean, it's just a second entry, but the fact that this forms so cleanly tells me that, okay, we came out of this move with the break new high. So this is done, right? This original move came down, break, new low, is done. So all this is done. So we've already then had this yellow rangy thing. It's already been failed breakout, come back, retest the breakout area. So everything is done. So the fact that this move can just kind of coexist in its own space tells me that it's going to operate in a way that is a little more predictable, right? Versus, you know, sometimes it's we have this break or we have this move up, we have the break, first leg up, and you kind of get this weak second leg up that starts to kind of just hover around the EMA and starts to like slowly work its way up.
Yeah.
Versus when prices move decisively. Hopefully that clears things up a little bit.
Yeah, it does, and I just need to spend the time doing what you did and go back with this in mind and look at these things.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at things, it's really
you were just on. It's like it doesn't seem like it's had any kind of support.
Yeah. So, and that's what I said.
So in that sense, like, are you just taking a trade based on the cleanness of the legs? I mean, I realize it's a second entry, but
and that's where Dan
it's
marks
also picking a bottom.
Well, then that's where Dan marks it as a green, right? This one I think has also a lot to do with the distance back to the EMA, right? But
and that's kind of what I was asking originally was how did you it just shot down? What made you think it might reverse there?
Oh, and this is like
this
is
the
where
second leg down.
Dan marks it as a green, right? So he understands this an aggressive trade, but this is where if we're looking at the clues that Dan is looking for, it's really you take the fundamentals of what we know with price action trading, and every trade really comes down to the cleanliness of the legs. And if it doesn't exist, a confidence in the support resistance, and that's pretty much it. Now, the only thing that may get a little wonky is sometimes lower highs and higher lows, just because sometimes we almost want, like, let's say a higher low in this scenario, right? We almost want that to be a little bit sideways, right? And not move too far. But outside of that, every trade pretty much has those principles in it.
And I think, and part of what I was asking is, you've got, starting at the top, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess 4 red bars down. You've got that pin bar at the bottom of that first move. You go up, then you 1, 2, 3, 4 bars down again. What makes you think this isn't a green bar up and it picks above that tail and just keeps going down?
Well, this is where first
I mean,
of all,
that was what.
Yeah, I think
Are we relying solely on the fact that it was 2 legs down and things moving 2?
Yeah, and that has to do with diagnosing earlier that it's a mixed trading day, right? If you ever heard Dan say his favorite days are the mixed trading days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, like, for instance, on today's chart, we are just kind of working up in a general upward bias that's not really responding to a lot of price action items, right? Because as much as price action is trying to develop, there's just this upward overall force on the market, right? So mixed trading allows you to essentially say, okay, I have these small, it's almost like it's self-contained phases, right? Where it's like, there's this move is the first part of the day, then there's this move, there's this move. So in these days, you can get kind of aggressive saying, okay, I can just trade these smaller moves without having to worry about, is there a larger something at play, right? So, with this trade has a lot to do with, okay, we're done with this. We're done with this, right? So tell me, what's the dominant force on the market? Right?
Yeah, nothing right now.
Yeah. So therefore, if we see a short-term channel with a break and a new low that's this far away from the EMA, right, you can get aggressive in that, because we know that we're not overriding the down, we're not overriding the up. Everything is constantly, we have shown about 3 or 4 times that we have just had a move and turned around, right? Like this move.
Yeah. Had a move, finished it, and done something else.
It's really, this move is no different than this move or this move. This is just like a more choppy version of this, right? And all these are just second entry longs or second entry shorts, right? And that's what I said. This one is a green, but yeah.
It seems like the cleanness of the legs, there's a certain counterintuitiveness about it because it almost makes them look stronger.
Yeah.
Like there's no presence of green, and all of a sudden you're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, Robert, that was exactly the impetus of my first question. Is it's just screaming down.
Yeah.
Why is it going to turn around? And to your point, it is counterintuitive.
And this is just like a mixed trading day, right? So this essentially, this one is screaming down, but it is also just, if you were to put on a different time frame, this is just a trend down, a break, and a leg down to a new low, right? Most of the time, Dan is looking to combine concepts for his trades. Like, for instance, ideally he would love to combine the cleanliness of the legs plus having a support or resistance key entry point to trade off of, right?
Sure.
But I think kind of what I saw over the past couple of weeks was, on almost every trade, there needs to be at least one of those two things, right? And it really boils down to, anytime I enter a trade, I just pay attention to the few bars before it, right? And if I see a setup and I feel good about the few bars before it, well, then I feel better about entering the trade. If I see prices are chopping at any point or getting congested in getting to where I want to, like for instance, the second entry long today, well, I better have a key entry point that I feel good about trading off of, right? Like I said, most of the time in Dan's world, he loves these sideways little triple tests, but sometimes it could just be a trending, move. And I see it brings that.
So can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That triple test short,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't draw the STT up, which I guess that's a second retest leg. I mean, that's clean, 2 strong green bars,
Mm-hmm.
and then but again, to me, those are hard to take.
Yeah, and
it looks like there's a lot of momentum moving up, and then he's marking it red and going short.
yeah, and this is where, in some ways we need to like kind of rewire how we think about how we enter in some of these trades, right? Like when we look at
Definitely.
rejection, right? It's like, I guess, imagine if you're standing in front of a wall, right? And you have a tennis ball, right? And you're throwing the ball back and forth to yourself, right? The faster that you throw that ball at that wall, right? And if it's moving and it moves in a straight line and the wall's smooth, right? It's going to bounce right back at you, right? If you kind of roll the ball at the wall, right? There's not as good of a chance of it bouncing, right back at you, right? Or if like the wall is like bumpy or whatever. It's having that opposing force to bounce off where we need to is kind of and I understand it is a tough thing to kind of rewire your brain to think about, but that's kind of how I have looked at it. Where you almost need that opposing force to bounce off of where we think trades are going to be made, right? Like for instance, it's like same thing. It's a good example where it's okay. Maybe we do have a clean leg up. We can make the argument that even before then it's a little choppy. Well, you then need this resistance line then to trade off of, right? And I think even Silas had mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, where he almost can't take it's reached a point now where you almost can't take a second entry, even if it's off a key entry point, because it feels like it's always trying to pick a bottom, and I guess to your point, Robert, too, about the STT, I did write in the Discord earlier, and it's kind of a tough concept. Even I, to this day, have a hard time with it sometimes. It's, if we have an area where there should be an STT, and it's heading towards like an area like this where we're expecting some resistance, it's almost like saying if the STT doesn't get that retest, it's a confirmation of the strength of the support or the resistance, if that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
We do have a small channel working in a direction, but we are also expecting prices to bounce off here. So we do get this strong bar as a sign to say, okay, that STT is weak compared to this. Right. And like I said, I know, I fully understand it is a tough thing to kind of rewire your brain because it is somewhat counterintuitive, right? But it's kind of the same thing over and over, right? Now, this one is a little.
Dan had said that earlier today about the double top. He said you've really got to train your eyes to see that, because I think it was Top G made kind of a good point. Like if your eyes are less trained, he's like, look how strongly that previous bar rejected off of there. But then Dan's like, yeah, but then it goes a short little space and comes right back up.
Yeah, and it just it didn't bounce off.
Yeah. But just like learning to see it in a different way,
and
training your eyes,
Yeah, because it's one of those things where we've all been kind of burned by certain things, so now we are looking for so much confirmation that sometimes we lose that. Sometimes that confirmation is actually just indecision, right? We're not getting the opposing force that we need. Like for instance, on this one, right? This key entry point is really just the this range turning into going from resistance to support and having this key entry point behind it, right? Like I said, if you look at the previous 4 or 5 bars, it's overlappy, choppy, right? So what is the one thing that we need if we're going to take a trade there? We need support. And for this trade, you have the 3 touches, plus you have this previous resistance with the break turning into support, and you have the EMA, right? So even in an aggressive, congested, choppy entry, the only thing that we can use that can override that is a strong key entry point behind it, right?
I mean, is that a breakout pullback?
It essentially
what's
is.
the entry there?
It is. It's a breakout pullback. This is basically a higher low breakout pullback. So what Dan is saying is this move is confirming this touch. I would say this should be marked as a green, right? But essentially, it's this third touch counts as this trend, breakout pullback, higher low, off everything, kind of working its way up. Probably, if you're to ask Dan specifically, he'd probably say he's looking for a potential second leg up to retest this.
Yeah.
And I think I think Mike was saying, why, or this is kind of one of those things where, okay, when would we be looking for prices to reverse out of here versus continue up for that second leg? Well, you kind of just got to use the evidence that you're given, right? And this one is, okay, maybe you would have some people who have this short-term move up, break, and they kind of see, right, these bearish bars up here and think, oh, reversal time, right? Well, this is where you just got to have so many things you're looking at the same time. Well, you do have this yellow range, right? You do have this development. This is like that move on the chart today, right? Where as much as we have this skinny move with the break and the new high, there was this development of you need to pay attention to draw this line and see if prices, how they react over here, right? And if you're going to end up short, you need the room to that line, right? All right, same thing here. Well, we look at the previous bars. Well, these are choppy, right? And it's not decisively down here. Well, what do we need in that scenario? We need one thing, and that's we need the key entry point. So we have this 1, 2, 3. And this choppiness is likely due to this move being strong and trying to create a stronger move down, but prices are just getting throttled here by you have this downward force and you have this key entry point, and they're kind of pushing against each other, right? So, I know this is all semi-difficult and tough to rewire everything, but it's just something I've gone through over and over and over again. And it's just a matter of on almost any entry. If you just look at the previous 5 bars and just ask yourself, did it move to where I want to cleanly? If not, I need something to bounce off of. Is there anything else in particular anyone wants to take a look at or discuss either from today's or yesterday's or any of those charts?
Do you mind having a look at that triple test from earlier today? I think I was talking on mute and you'd moved on by then.
This one?
Yeah, that last one. So,
sorry, real quick,
a little bit.
Just before I forget my train of thought here, when you see these orange boxes on my chart going forward, that's really it's when I see prices start to move in a direction and I feel like it's not moving cleanly. I just put an orange box there. And what that tells me is that leg, whether it's the first leg, second leg, whatever, I don't feel it's a clean leg towards whoever I'm looking to trade. So, yeah, sorry about that. Again, go ahead.
Sure. No worries. That triple test. So I did take that,
Mhm.
but I was a little bit hesitant because it made a lower low.
Mhm.
And in at what times or on what occasion? Now, I thought that looked like a pretty decent. The lows were pretty consistent, as were
Yeah.
the highs at that point. When is it okay to take something like that? When, because I do have seen Dan and Mac, probably more Mac than Dan, take these triple tests when they make a higher low. Yeah, if they've made a I'm getting my higher lows and lower highs mixed up here, but if they've made a lower low than the previous lows when we're going long, so in this
Yeah.
case, it's made a lower low. When is it okay to kind of take that, and when should you avoid it?
So on that, and just to make you kind of comment, I was looking for a trend here. I was looking for this exact triple test, and I think the number one thing you want to look for is consistency versus coincidence, right? And what I mean by that is, I think these lows were all very, very consistent, right? It's really on the same line, right? Versus sometimes when it is making higher highs and lower lows, right? Or vice versa, it's moving sideways, but even up here, see how it's like kind of matching up here? You'll see something and it's choppy, right? And it's, you know, and then we get one that's like a lower low, right? But it's kind of still moving. We're not making consistent highs and lows. I would definitely say this is like the consistency of this bottom, right? It's, and I'm gonna be really careful in describing this, okay? Um, is a good sign. I think the fact that we made it all the way back up here. Now, I'm going to talk about something that Mac very rarely talks about. Dan doesn't talk about it that much and often either. Sometimes when you do make this lower low, it is acting as a little bit of a failed breakout, right? Where it's coming down, collecting stops a bit, and then kind of rocketing its way back up, right? I would not use that as a main reason, but that's kind of what's happening there, right?
Oh,
Um, um, really, yeah, you're looking for the consistency of these lows. And like I said, the one kind of determining factor for me was I wish this would have ticked a little bit higher up here. So it looked more like just a two legs down to here versus it maybe I was undecided if this is a chop or if this is two legs down, right? So in this case, if these were a little more inconsistent and the legs were just a little kind of more, like at least this leg up is clean, this leg down is semi-clean. You have a little bit of chop here, a little bit of chop here, but you see how it's still kind of making these clean, decisive moves up and down, right? I
yeah.
think that's when you can look at that. Like I said, I don't know if you were listening or on that part of the call where I said when this was forming, I said I'm going to give myself one tick below because you said, I have a hard time taking those myself, right? I'm going to give it one tick, and if it goes one tick down, I'll take it. But then it went two ticks down. It's like, okay, I'm okay skipping. And I think the only other thing on this is when we have this move up, we are expecting this retest. So that's what you have going for you.
Yeah,
But I'm
so it's
sure the
the
reason,
consistency of the range.
yeah, a lot of people are probably worried about something like this, right? This is a tough. This one's tough just because it's so tight. We're looking at a 4-point range, right? But yeah, that is kind of what you're looking at there.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and listen, I think the only other thing I'll put on that is just, I kind of briefly touched on, is just where it happens, right? this is happening in an area where we are expecting prices to go up here, right, to retest at some point, right? So as much as we are expecting a kind of a break with the second entry long out here, we've seen prices, I think, consistently go 1, 2, 3. So we may not get that, and we don't, right? So we may not get that kind of clean legs down. And that's probably what happens here is this stuff just gets squished in trying to make the 2 legs, but it's getting hit by the support. But yeah, I was looking.
On that,
yeah.
On that one, if you were setting your take profit for a new high, like say the top of that wick, it comes and takes you out, and then it goes and makes the new high after the second entry.
Sorry.
I don't know if that happened to anybody, but
so what were you saying? So if you set the
on that first second entry long,
this one.
So say somebody enters there and they put their take profit at the top of that wick because they're thinking, okay, it's going to test that high.
Yeah.
Instead it tests the body, not the wick, comes down, takes you out because it ticks below, and then turns around and goes and retests the top.
Yeah. Robert, that's a fair point. I have noticed that too, right? Where we talked about this whole concept where if we have a trend working up, right, and we have prices coming off the tops, right, and they make usually, right, I think we can all agree, we would love to see more than anything like a very nice proportionate 2 legs back, right? I think that's what we all are looking for, right? Now, and this is to your point, Robert, what you just said, if we get like a long sell-off leg, right, and then we are unable to get like that big of something like that because the correction is so small, even if, and this, I would love to, maybe probably we'll look at it in futures training sessions, even if we do get the scalp here, more often than not, we do end up getting at some point the break to complete a somewhat of a measured move. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but I have noticed that oftentimes if we get this strong initial push down, even if we get the scalp, we don't go very far. This move wants to play out, right? So that's a good point, Robert.
That's a good point too, because on that second entry, it looks like it's an equal low. And then you get that next leg down that makes a new low, and then you get a bigger push up.
Yeah. Really, it's this leg and this leg are more related than this second leg.
Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, very interesting.
I've noticed that a lot because I'm sure we've all taken the trade, and a lot of us will get burned on where if we take, there will always be a move, and it's a strong move back to the EMA, right, or to this trend line, and then we get like a real small higher low, right? All of us want to take this higher low right here on the key entry point, and it goes up like 2 or 3 ticks and just rockets down,
Yep.
So that's where it's, these legs do want to play itself out, and I think that's why Dan takes so much into account how clean legs are in getting to certain places, because that's even when our key entry points and our trend lines are our bread and butter, these things still want to play out if they move, and they're the way they're supposed to. So. All right, I think that's it for, we've been going about an hour.